everybody wants to talk about the 8 million people that fled Venezuela and they claim it was because of the evil dictator, but nobody wants to talk about all the
The
sanctions the
economics of
US
it.
put
Yep.
on and people were starving and stuff like it. We destroyed their economy.
Yeah. Yep. And we're proud about it too. I mean, that's the whole thing. And then I had some guy tell me today that there's 400,000 Venezuelans in Florida celebrating. Oh, sure. They're the ones who were lucky and got out. Doesn't mean that it was, the Maduro's fault. It was the United States that imposed the sanctions. Nothing seems to like hit these guys who claim that everything what we're doing is correct. Everything is for the greater good of America. This is making America great. Everybody's now respecting us. Bullshit. You go out there and look at what the world is saying about
The
America.
world's
That is
pissed.
not respect.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Patriots Table. Of course, we got to talk about Venezuela. Everything's going on with Venezuela. We're going to take the first part of the episode, really hammer that down, but then stay tuned because later we're going to have a special guest on to further discuss stuff along that topic as well. But man, Ravi, I don't know about you. Well, I do know. The MAGA stuff was just unhinged with this Venezuela stuff. Like I've never like this was worse in my opinion. This was worse than COVID. Like you had the
Yes.
people who was all yeah, too weak to flatten the curve, masks work, Dr. Science, Fauci was great and everything and like for the most part a lot of people are, okay, you're just too bad. Like I literally think this is worse than that.
Yeah.
People are got their heads buried so deep in the sand that they can't hear or see anything. And I've never been accused of being a liberal than now in my life, which is crazy. I've still to this day I've never voted for a Democrat. Like I still have never voted for a Democrat, and I'm now a liberal. The I have the Trump derangement syndrome being thrown at me is incredible, which, I literally, I'm going to just say, I think the MAGA people have TDS and Trump denial syndrome. Everybody's in denial. Nobody can think for themselves. Like, Trump can do no wrong.
Right.
I literally think he could take a fat, steaming crap on people's plates and say it was steak, and everybody would start chowing down and say it's the best ribeye they've ever had in their life. It's that bad. Like, did has nobody paid attention to what's happened the past 20 years? What happened in the Middle East? I mean, Trump just repeated what Bush did, what Obama did, what Biden did, and tried to chalk it all up like we're saving Venezuela and we're getting rid of a criminal. Like the first thing I saw was, well, it wasn't an act of war. Like I mean, I'm assuming everybody's heard about this. I don't know if we need to really break down into detail on what happened. It's on
No,
every
I
news
think I
channel.
think
I'm
it's
pretty sure.
important. I think it's important to at least give people the context because there are people who are listening to this from other parts of the world. I'm sure
Sure.
they've heard about it too. But I think in context, to give it some context, I mean, it's important. I think we should know what really happened. So we've been trying to create a regime change in Venezuela for the past 10 years that I know of, and it could be even further than that. And I've been following
Right.
this along. They've tried many different ways of doing it, and there's multiple reasons for this. I don't think it's any one or the other, but the primary reason that they created a super false, reason to indict him and his family for narcotics. He was considered a narco terrorist, so he was bringing narcotics into this country and sending it around the world or whatever. That was the premise of it. So they used that indictment and just initially it was basically a show of power. So we saw Trump send naval vessels out to the sea around Venezuela, just thump the chest a little bit, fly around some bombers and whatever, and then they bombed a few boats, claiming that these were boats
The
taking
drug
narcotics
boats,
from
yeah.
drug boats. No one really knew what they were because the boats were bombed out of the water using drones. No bodies were discovered. No parts of the boats were discovered. I don't know if you saw anything. I didn't see anything being presented as evidence for the claim. So anybody can make a claim, right? And
Right.
we know our government especially makes all these wild claims about everything, and they're most of the time not true. So then they started that, and everybody started saying, like, and this was basically the standing ground for the MAGA Republicans to start cheering Trump for stopping drugs coming into the country. So that was the beginning of it. And then it pretty soon, I mean, within like a month or two, escalated to a severe buildup. And then we had a visitor from our favorite country, our ally, on December 31st. And I don't know if you ever heard him, and I think we probably have a clip that we can probably play, at a later date or whatever. I have one where he actually came in and tied in. So the guy we're talking about is Bibi Netanyahu, obviously, and he came into Mar-a-Lago for the sixth or seventh time this year, which is really weird. And he spoke at some event where he mentioned the connection of Israel and Venezuela in the US, and how, there was some connection there and that we need to take care of some problems. And 3 days later, in the middle of the night, Trump orders a bombing attack inside of Caracas, the capital, and then going into the president's house and abducting. And I'm going to call it abducting because that's what it is. And people may claim whatever they want, but you don't go into a country in the middle of the night, bomb the country, kill some civilians in the process, and then abduct the president of that nation. I don't care if he's there legally or illegal. I mean, we had supposedly an illegal president for 4 years and nobody came in and grabbed him. I mean,
Right.
would these people like have the same reaction if that happened?
No,
I mean,
like
it's
that's
stupid.
absolutely asinine. And I do want to add that, everybody's like, first, people were saying it wasn't an act of war because
That's bullshit.
he had a warrant
Yeah,
and he was an illegitimate president. He rigged and stole the election. Let me say this. I do not care, and this isn't just me. It doesn't matter if he was illegitimately the president or not. He was in power of a sovereign nation.
right,
According to international laws, if you take military action like the US did, that is considered an act of war. Period. It doesn't matter if we liked that the guy was in charge. Just like it doesn't matter if, like, according to that, Putin's a illegitimate leader of Russia because he's poisoned and killed his competition. We're not bombing Russia,
yeah,
and probably because we can't, and they got nukes, and it would be horrible, and that'd be the spark of World War III, and maybe the end of humanity as we know it, because but that shouldn't have any part in the ethics of what we did. So what we did was an act of war. And yes, if any country did that, if there was bombers that bombed DC, military infrastructure in DC, and took Trump in the middle of the night for war crimes, and here's the thing, they could be like, well, you helped fund a genocide in the Middle East, so we had some courts say you were guilty of this, so we're taking you, Trump. Would we go like, well, he had a warrant out in stinking Iran or something, so yeah, we're gonna let him just take him. It wasn't a kidnapping. They just extracted him and was executing the warrant. Like we can execute a warrant in a foreign sovereign nation. This isn't the U.S. It's not the police going and kicking down the door of a drug house. That's not how this works. We are
right,
not the world's police. The UN, nobody elected the US to be the world's police and decide who when to overthrow a dictator or what have you. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now people are questioning the legalities of even doing that without the approval from Congress. There's stuff on that. I don't even think it's really all that warranted. It doesn't matter because even if even if it was Even if it is legal for him to do it, that doesn't make it right. If
Correct.
it's
Yes.
illegal, he still shouldn't be doing it. So I'm not a I don't want to speak because I'm not 100% sure. There's some stuff that could be applied that I've read and seen that could be applied to this situation where he could have the legal grounds to do it and then have 30 days to get congressional approval to either end or continue. But, so I can't say for certain which way it goes, but it was for sure an act of war, and anybody saying otherwise, you're being grossly misled because according to any country, you did that to any country, it'd be considered an act of war. It doesn't matter. And if any country did that to the US, we would be Pearl Harbor all over again.
Yeah. I mean, there's two other things too with this, right? So one of the things is that it sets a clear precedent that a powerful country can just go and do whatever they want and get away with it,
Hmm.
right? I mean, that's a very bad thing for. I mean, many nations are now going to be like very leery of anything to do with the U.S. I mean, imagine this, right? So, I mean, like Vladimir Zelensky, I mean, was placed in there by Obama in 2014, carrying out a coup that actually ejected the rightfully and democratically elected president there. So, in other words, what you just told the entire world is that if Russia just walks in there, I mean, like stop fight, like bombing and fighting, they just go right in there, march right in there, and just kidnap him and take him over because there's warrants for his arrest in Russia. Is that going to be okay? I mean, is it okay if China just walks into Taiwan or someplace and just takes away their, leader because A, they don't like him, and B, like they've been fighting China forever for not being, getting annexed? This
Or
is
somebody that actually has international warrants, like
right.
Netanyahu, can
Well,
can
that's the
Russia,
next thing,
China, or
right?
somebody go and extract him for his warrants that he
Well, he
has?
just comes in and goes out of the U.S. with no problems, and there's a nice, there's an international criminal court warrant out for him, based on his actions in Gaza. And the
Hmm.
guy has come in and gone into the US 6 times or 7 times this year with absolutely no problem. And then the mayor of New York tells him that if he comes to New York, we arrest him. And then everybody goes, apeshit on that guy for saying that because apparently we have two different sets of rules for the two different sets of people, and that doesn't work. I mean, like it's absolutely not going to work. And for people who say that, okay, yeah, we don't. Every other regime change costs human life and a lot of money, and this one here we dropped a few bombs and took him, no life, American lives were lost. Well, I don't care. That's not the point.
Right, because doing the wrong thing is
Yeah,
easy. It makes it right all of a sudden. What are you
it doesn't
like?
make
What are you
sense to me. I
talking
mean, like
about?
these people who are content. The second, the other thing is that I have a problem with is that everything that they're cheering Trump on right now is things that he promised he would not do during his election. We have on
Right?
record him
Hmm.
saying that we're not going to start new wars, in which he has already started like three, and there's like three more on the list. And now people who are living in Iran are probably wondering, like, is he going to come after us next? And now he's been, on record saying that he's going to go after Greenland and take it over because it's in our
Yeah.
national interest to do so. So you basically are
Greenland,
saying that,
Cuba, like,
yeah, I'm like, I'm in a, you're just telling the world, I'm the world's bully. I can just go in there and take your country over. And that country belongs to Denmark. Yeah, we don't need to ask Denmark. We just go in and put a military base because we like the location. I mean, the country where I come from should start becoming a little leery and be aware of this because they could be next. Because every strategic location, so the U.S. has suddenly figured out that China has pretty much taken control of strategic locations all around the globe with their trade policies that they while the US was sleeping and going to war with countries for the sake of Israel for the last 10, 20 years. China has been building a really good network of places where it's strategically important for them. And part of the reason why Venezuela is got in the crosshairs of the US was because of that. right? I mean,
Well,
they built some of the
China was getting
infrastructure.
70% of the oil
Yeah,
coming out of Venezuela was going to China.
because they,
And I find it very weird that it was 6 hours before the Venezuelan president was abducted. He had a meeting with the Chinese delegation.
correct, because they wanted to join BRICS, right?
Hmm.
So like now there's a economic alliance forming outside of the U.S. that is highly unlikely to use. I mean, they won't. We know this for a fact. They won't be using the dollar for their trade. And they're not using dollars. I mean, like this whole thing that I think it was Henry Kissinger who started, got it going in Saudi Arabia, whatever, that the oil needs to be done, like the trade needs to be done in dollars. That's going to go away. So imagine the world's largest oil reserve, which is in Venezuela, not trading that oil in dollars and maybe trading it in yuan or whatever the Chinese currency. I mean, so there's a lot of other things that are going on, and they don't even lie about this anymore. So the whole
No.
narco terrorist thing, we're going to stop the drugs, all that disappeared, months after they said that, and it was after the oil. And as soon as they abducted the president, I mean, Trump is out there talking about how he's going to send the, U.S. oil companies who were there before, help him
Right.
build some of the infrastructure. And that's another thing. I mean, the U.S. oil companies were not the only ones
No.
who were building the Venezuelan oil infrastructure before they nationalized all of it. I mean, there were other, foreign interests out there as well. They kicked all of them out. Now, why didn't they go and abduct the president and take over the oil? Because there's international laws, right? People abide by these laws for a reason. So here comes the thug of the world and decides that it's time for us to take all of that back, and like now he's even talking about running the country.
No,
Right?
I mean, and I want to debunk all these things, all these the reasons they're saying this. So, one, the first big one was the obviously the drugs coming into the US and stuff, and we needed to stop that. Okay, that doesn't make sense. Out of one, just and everybody can go look this up. I'm not
Yeah.
making this up. Venezuela doesn't even make the top 10 list of
Mhm.
countries with the most imported, drugs coming into the smuggled into the US. It's number 12th. If we were doing that, Mexico would be number 1, and we're
Correct.
not doing that. So it wasn't about the drugs. It was never about the drugs. That was, hey guys, we're looking for excuses. So that was the first one. Second one was he was illegitimate president and he was a dictator, and they were pushing for the lady that won the Nobel Peace Prize was
Yeah.
Venezuelan,
Machado.
that they were going to support her for
Yeah.
replacing, so a regime change essentially. And then it wasn't even 48 hours after the fact Trump changes it up. They were not supporting her, and the temporary leader, the vice president, is now the one in negotiations with Trump and stuff with Venezuela. So you're going to tell me that you were removing him because it was an illegitimate administration and a stolen election there. So you're then going to support the vice president in that illegitimate election? You're still that would she would still be
Right.
considered illegitimate. So it's
Yeah.
not even about who's running the place. She was still part of that horrible regime. And you're so like what people need to wake up. Like once it's easy to tell a lie, it's really hard to back up that lie with stuff that makes sense after it is told, because then you got to keep on creating more and more lies to support your first lie, and it starts falling apart. That's what this is doing.
That's
And
what they
then
do with everything, right? I mean, even the Charlie Kirk.
everybody's like the Venezuelans are celebrating. There was like one or two, like two major videos circulating, and the videos were not even in Venezuela. The number one video that was being circulated around the internet of Venezuelans cheering was in Chile. It wasn't even in Venezuela. And now there's videos coming out of Venezuelans ticked off
Yeah.
that their president was taken. They have generals, military people. I mean, there's a bunch of Latin American countries outside of Venezuela coming out condemning this, not happy about it, including Mexico, Brazil. I mean, it's so bad, and like you would think, and this is why I was saying like these MAGA people will believe anything Trump says,
Uh-huh.
because you would think when you can catch them in one lie, why are you lying about this?
Right.
Why are you lying? Why are you lying? If you're gonna lie about this one thing, what's the real reason? Why are you lying about it being about drugs? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make logical sense. Why are you lying about it being for the Venezuelan people and a dictator? That doesn't make sense. But then what's even more twisted is Trump even comes out and says they're taking the oil. We're taking control of the oil. We're taking
Uh-huh.
control of the country. We're like first he lies, we lie about it, and then we say the real reason, and then these MAGA people are gonna still defend the lies after Trump finally says the real reason. Like that, it doesn't make sense. Now, if you want to turn around and be like, no, I'm a nationalist. I want the American empire and global superiority. We need to take control of the biggest supply of oil in the world, back China into a corner, make sure that it's going to be the US dollar that's going to be traded, and thump our chests. America's the biggest, baddest, and you want to be a world bully, at least freaking admit it. Quit
Uh-huh.
lying to everybody. Quit gaslighting yourself. Quit gaslighting everybody else and thinking that you're just this humanitarian person, and then say, oh, the church is coming out of Venezuela. They're finally coming out of tunnels. Like, get out of here.
Yeah, I know.
Get
Yeah,
out of
it's
here. People are
you know,
messaging me that, oh, well, it's the church. The Christians can finally come out here. Like
yeah, Venezuela
it's
never
worse.
had
It's
that
worse
problem.
than COVID. I would say
It
this is
is.
worse than Iraq,
Oh yeah.
Afghanistan. This like
Well, the
it's
problem is
bad,
we haven't even seen the beginning of the aftermath of what we did, right? I mean, like, so
right?
everybody is right now assuming, and one of the other things that I don't understand, maybe you can, help me here understand it. I see a lot of people saying, oh, we're going to get, we just wanted to get what oil that we would do. Due for what? I mean, like, yeah, you had private companies go out there and build some infrastructure so that they could pump the oil, but their government decided that they were going to nationalize the oil fields. That's their prerogative. You were not owed anything. There was a breach of
Well,
contract. Okay, maybe that, you know, was a breach of contract. Sue them over that. You just can't go in there and say, okay, we need your oil because you guys didn't let us pump enough
well,
oil while we built something.
what the U.S. did as a result, they didn't sue them. They put sanctions on
Sanctions, yeah.
them
And this is the
and
reason.
and destroyed
Yeah.
and started destroying their economy. So what did Venezuela start do? Mass trade and exports to countries like Russia and China.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm not
Why?
going to, you can't blame countries for the, I mean, putting
No.
sanctions on a country like Venezuela, I mean, like that, I'm surprised that there was actually no, mass casualties with that. I mean, like, because it's not a, highly developed, country that has everything there. I mean, like, they needed to import stuff, which they couldn't. So,
Well,
like,
everybody
most
wants to talk about the 8 million people that fled Venezuela and they claim it was because of the evil dictator, but nobody wants to talk about all the
the
sanctions the
economics of
US
it.
put
Yep.
on. And people were starving and stuff like it. We destroyed their economy.
Yeah. Yep. And we are proud about it too. I mean, that's the whole thing. And then I had some guy tell me today that there's 400,000 Venezuelans in Florida celebrating. Oh, sure, they're the ones who were lucky and got out. Doesn't mean that it was, the Maduro's fault. It was the United States that imposed the sanctions. So nothing seems to like hit these guys who claim that everything what we're doing is correct. Everything is for the greater good of America. This is making America great. Everybody's now respecting us. Bullshit. You go out there and look at what the world is saying about
The
America.
world's
That is
pissed.
not respect. I'm sorry. So if you
Well, and
believe
the
that,
people that are supporting America, that's I want you to think about a school and you have the schoolyard bully.
yeah,
The people who are cheering on America are the little hype men behind the bully that are scared that the bully's going to hit them and they don't want to
Right.
be kicked out of the cool kids club.
Yeah.
That's all that is. Nobody
Yeah.
is actually super proud of what the U.S. is doing. Maybe I'll take that back.
Yeah. Israel
Netanyahu is
doesn't care.
proud.
So.
Israel's happy because they're pulling strings on this stuff too. So they're happy about it. They mean it. They're proud of Trump. I believe Netanyahu when he says that Trump has been Israel's biggest ally and biggest supporter. I believe that.
Oh, of course, yes, yeah. Because he does everything that they ask him to do. I mean,
And
like the
Trump has
guy who
admitted that.
promised,
He
yeah.
has
I mean, like,
openly admitted that.
of
We're not
course. I mean,
making this up.
I think both of them are, like they're not lying about that, which is, which is obvious. I mean, they lie about that. I mean, they're stupid. Because I mean, Trump came into office with no wars, and for 12 days they bombed Iran. I can
Mhm.
already see like what the Iranians are thinking about and what's next on the list, because I mean I'm pretty sure, I mean, like, if you listen to what Netanyahu says, he pretty much tells openly what countries that he wants us to go bomb. Right. So
Yeah.
that's, I mean, like, Iran has been on that list for, like, I don't know, 50, 20 years now almost,
Oh yeah.
or more, right? I mean, at least the first time I heard about it was 2007. So, I mean, yeah, I'm going to assume that it was even earlier than that, but that's on the list. So, what are we going to do? We're going to cheer on Trump to go at night and destroy, the infrastructure in Iran and capture their leader? Is that, and then they wonder why people in the Middle East and the Muslims hate us.
Right.
I mean,
Well, the
this is
rest of the
not
world's
rocket
gonna hate us
science.
too. I mean, it's just not gonna be the in Middle East. Now we're gonna add the Latin Americans. Like we're, I mean, this is Tucker pointed this out on his episode about it. It's like, before it was all, WMDs and, terrorists and all this stuff. And now we have people openly, Trump's openly talking about now we're taking over the oil. We're taking control of this. We're running Venezuela. We're doing this. And it's like he said that America has transitioned into now a full-fledged empire.
Yeah.
We're just building an empire. So from the stuff he's talking about, Greenland, Venezuela, Cuba, all this stuff. I mean, and people were so like, and we did an episode on the difference between patriotism and nationalism. And like, there's nationalism that's running rampant throughout
Hmm.
America. That's just everybody thinks we're superior, that we're better than everybody. And
Yeah.
I warn people. It wasn't too long ago, there's people's grandparents or great grandparents that are still alive today that witnessed a country that thought what they had was so great that the rest of the world should experience it. And there
Hmm.
was a world war fought over it because it was horrible. And I will also say that people really need to learn their history. I was told recently that it doesn't matter about the history because the Venezuelans were happy about what happened. Well, I remember and read up on and watched and, educated myself. People in Iraq were cheering when the US
Hmm.
first did what they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was thousands of Iraqis cheering. They weren't cheering after a million of them were killed after all the conflict.
Hmm.
And that what happened because of what the US did, the aftermath. We don't know how bad the aftermath is going to be in Venezuela, but there is going to be an aftermath.
Of course, yeah. I mean, we are going to have to put troops down on the ground. I mean, if you're going to run the place, you can't do it remotely. That's
Well, the
going to be a civil
some of
war.
the military leaders said they were already going to resist any military occupation of the country. I
Of
mean
course, they're
that
going to. I mean, so this
so
is where the problem starts. So, like, all of these people who are cheering this on, I mean, they better not have, fighting age kids with them, because this is what's going to happen, and this happens every time. I mean,
hmm
like, it's not only Iraq. I mean, we saw Libyans on the street cheering or cheering. I mean, every country where we
yeah.
cause regime change and topple the government, it was oppressive to some people. I mean, like, the same thing would happen here too. I mean, you think that if people
Oh
come
my
in
gosh,
and,
absolutely.
yeah,
I made
it's
that
like
point
50
on
50.
social media with people. You think all the people that hate Trump like really hate Trump and loathe him, wouldn't be tens of thousands of Americans cheering if
Yeah.
Trump got kidnapped in the middle of the night?
I mean, there are
Like,
people who were cheering when he almost got, when he got shot. Do you remember
right,
that?
right. Yes, there was people cheering
Yeah.
about that. So if you had a good PR team with some videos, you could make it seem like, oh, America's just happy Trump got
Yeah.
shot or got kidnapped. Like
Absolutely.
it's just so like people need to think. You
They
need to
don't. I mean,
think.
this is the thing, right? I mean, they don't think. So this is basically what I call hero worship, right? I mean,
Mm,
they have created a hero out of Trump, and to some degree, I mean, like his political platform. I can understand why they did that because he put America first, making America great again. No war. I mean, everything that people wanted, transparency. I mean, like putting us first, doing everything for the American people, and then he comes in and does exactly the opposite. And now, we saw the same thing with people in this whole vaccine movement, right? I mean, the parents
mhm.
who vaccinate their kids, no matter what science you put in front of their face, and now, in fact, even the agencies changing their mind about what they were doing because of things that were done incorrectly. They don't want to believe that. I mean, they still
Right,
want to go ahead because they are afraid that they made the wrong choice and they hurt someone. So like, it's the same way. It's a hero worship. They just don't
yep,
want to believe that the guy that they voted for three times can be wrong. And here, there's a small subsection of us. I mean, we don't hate the guy. I mean, I'm not going to be standing out on the street if the guy, no. But we're standing up for what is right and we are pointing out what is wrong and that we all need to see it because if not, all of this stuff that they're doing they're going to turn it around and it's going to come back to bite you. Because
yep,
you don't for one second think that if they can they wander off into a country and, kidnap their leader, that they're not going to wander into your house and kidnap you or, put some serious constraints on what you're able to say and do online. I mean, like, that's one of the things I value about this country, and one of the reasons I'm here is because we have the freedoms that most other countries don't. Okay. But those are getting eroded too. Like right now, there's talk about, Trump's even like, I don't know how far he's true. I just saw a brief thing that flashed by that the midterm elections, he's now afraid he's going to lose them. And he's like perplexed and he's wondering why his base is split. I mean, come on. Are you not listening? Are you not seeing? Are you not understanding what you're doing? This is like high schoolers.
yeah,
I mean, we
yeah,
know what you're not doing, and we are speaking up so that you actually see what the people want. And these same people who are right now, like saying what he's doing is right, will say the same thing if he suddenly decides tomorrow to change course and go back to what he promised. So they'll be on the same, side of the fence.
yeah,
They're not going to move anywhere.
right.
But we cannot
Well,
sit there, and I'm not going to sit there, look at this and say, oh, yeah, and make excuses for the things that he's doing wrong. That's not,
right,
what
right,
I think is the right thing to do.
right. And criticizing him doesn't mean you automatically have Trump
Nothing.
derangement syndrome. So
Or
I do,
non-patriotic or whatever.
yeah, yeah. Or you're just a liberal nut job or whatever. I know we're gonna here in a minute we're gonna welcome on our guest, but I do want to before we do that, I do want to say a quote from I think probably my favorite person from the American Revolution and the founding of our country, Thomas Paine. And he said quite brilliantly that government, even in its best state, is a necessary evil, in its worst state, an intolerable one.
That is
And
correct,
people
yes.
really need to remember that, especially when it comes to even Trump, even your most favorited politician that you think is sent from God. Government in its best state is but a necessary evil. Our founding fathers understood this, and that's why they gave us equipped us with a way to stop it if it got bad enough. So um, we're going to take a just a quick break here, guys, and then we're going to welcome on guests for the last half hour of the episode. All right, guys, we're bringing on a special guest to, in lieu of everything going on, we wanted to bring somebody on to be able to speak to some of this stuff. We are pleased to welcome Dennis Brennan. Now, Dennis is a author, attorney, and historian. Spent many years examining intersections of power, justice, and the narrative. He recently came out with a book,
Oh,
uh,
thanks. I appreciate you guys having
DC
me on.
Swamp
It's a
Strikes
pleasure to
Back,
be here.
Aaron Burr, Donald Trump, and their similar battles. Dennis, welcome to the show. So, I mean, I'm sure you were as shocked as we were to wake up the other day and find out that, hey, we decided to go bomb the
Yeah,
capital of another
I was
nation
shocked.
and grab their
Obviously I've been
president out in the middle of
following,
the night. I'm
what's
interested to
going
hear
on with
your
the,
take on the
the
whole
drug
thing.
boats, as Trump has said, and bombing of those, and the Navy surrounding Venezuela, and putting up a blockade, and even chasing the oil tankers. So it's been great to watch all that. But even with all that happening, whenever we have a situation where we go into another country, even if it's for 3 hours or whatever this was, you're a little shocked when you read it. And like most people, I've gotten into that bad habit. You wake up, you you check your phone. It's like the first thing you want to do. And I see this as the news feed, and I'm like, oh my God. And then you want to know everything about it, which, you know, lucky for us, cable news, whatever network you watch, they're covering it. So, you have a lot of opponents of Trump trying to make political hay out of the, um, I guess, capture of Maduro is, I guess, what we're calling it, and whether that's an act of war or not. And we haven't declared war since World War II, but we've been, certainly in the Korea conflict, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, uh, in between, Grenada. That was one I woke up to years ago and found out, Reagan had actually invaded Grenada to free some medical school students. And, I could tell you something about that. The biggest disappointment was a few days later, they had listed all the students who had gone to school at this medical school. And my father was sitting at the table. He would always have the paper. And I was looking through all these names, and one of the names popped up as someone I had gone to high school with. And I said, what's this? He was a worse student than me in biology. I could have gone to medical school? Who knew? I didn't even know medical schools were around outside the US. Like, wait, there's a medical school in Grenada? You, you lay around on the beach? What is this? But I'm not sure that medical school would have taken me either. But it's a little disheartening when you find out the guy got a lower grade than you in biology, and he's going to be a doctor. So it's it's happened a lot where we see these military incursions, and you always see the opposition seem to come out against whatever the president's doing. I think maybe the only time I can remember off the top of my head is when bin Laden was killed. I don't remember Republicans complaining that Obama basically, went over there, great plan, and they executed him, for lack of a better term. Um, because why would you complain? It's like, great, good job. I kind of thought you'd get the same thing with Maduro. It's not a guy that anybody should be supporting, but it sounds like that's where we're at right now.
Well, I
Well,
know
why do
me and
you
Ravi
think?
were
Yeah,
talking earlier because I think a lot of it has, because there's one of the big things that Trump was elected on, at least in a lot of the people in the MAGA movement, was talking about America first and not wanting to get involved in any more foreign entanglements. People were kind of sick of it after being in the Middle East for over 20 years and just wants to focus on what we have going on here. And then
Yeah.
I think some of it some of the stuff that was being said at the beginning just wasn't making a lot of sense. It's like at first it was about the drugs,
Yeah.
and it's like hold on. Mexico is number one on that list. Venezuela is like number 12, and then it was like, oh well, he wasn't a duly elected. He stole the election. Like, okay,
Yeah.
well, there's a lot of elections that are stolen around the world. We're not policing all that around, and then you got the vice president over there now running the show and Trump's and talking with, and it's like, well, if Maduro was not elected properly, the vice president wasn't elected properly. So people are like, okay, so is
Yeah.
this just about the oil? Like, okay, there's over 300 billion barrels of oil. Are we just making a move on this? Is it a China thing? That's 70% of their. So I think people are just not liking the fact that it seems like we're getting lied to
It's a lack of
even by Trump.
transparency, right? Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
supposed to be the transparency administration. It doesn't. It's
Little
like they're kind of
little
taking us a little bit for
inconsistencies.
fools. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I do think, it's amazing they did so well militarily to do this whole operation, but their explanation was so poor. Like, really, you would think you would put a little time into this while you're sitting around and thinking, okay, this is how it's going to be executed. Because let's face it, the politicians aren't really deciding how do we fly in, how many planes, where do we bomb, what do we, who do we hit, how do we get in there? They're supposed to be thinking of what do we tell the public when this breaks and we announce it. And you're right, and even, the first thing we're running the country now. Wait a minute. No, we're not. Don't say that. And
Uh,
I think the other shock was we're going to put the vice president in or let her assume her office. I think to your point earlier, where you were saying, well, if this whole administration's corrupt, why is she taking over rather than the woman that Machado, who actually won the election, according to pretty much everybody that's reported on it? And if that's the case, why aren't we helping her get in there? Or at the very least, say, and I thought they would say at some point, we're going to have elections. They're
Mm.
going to have an election. We're going to see what happens, and we're going to work as partners with them, which I think they've tried to allude to. But now it's come down to we're taking the oil, and it's going to benefit America and Venezuela. Which, if I'm Venezuelan, I'd like to see the numbers on that. Like, wait a minute,
right.
right? I could see them being upset, and so you take that chance where you're creating another quagmire, like Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, pretty much everywhere we've been. And that's always a problem. You don't want, other countries to not only hate you, but want to kill you. We want to breed terrorism. And
Right.
so I was disappointed in the explanation and still a little disappointed that they haven't been, better at it. You know, certainly the people in Venezuela deserve freedom. I mean, we've been hearing how people that come into this country deserve freedom. And, how can you be so mean to deny people crossing in? Well, same way I think everybody deserves freedom, but, you know, I don't know if it can't be the U.S. drops bombs and picks up the leader of countries we disagree with. So they should have done a better job explaining it. And it is kind of amazing. I sit there and think, wow, militarily, that's what strikes you when you first read it. It's like, wow, they were really good. And I mean, the U.S. military's usually good when you let them do their job, but I think that's counteracted by here's all these explanations that make it seem like we're there for the oil, which ultimately might be the truth.
Well, at least admit it. Like and I was telling Robbie earlier, it's if you just come out and be like, "Hey, we're there because China's getting a lot of oil from there, Russia's getting a lot of oil from there, the dollar's in trouble, and we're doing this to," I mean, just say it's a power move, and we're making sure we're securing our we're consolidating our power. I mean, that's essentially what. Whether you agree with it or not, at least come out and say
Mhm.
what it is. Don't put some fluff stories out there to make it sound like a humanitarian thing or a
Right.
national security thing because, drugs are coming into the country. It just doesn't, it's not, it doesn't sit right with the people. If you come out and lie about it, people are going to start asking questions, why are you lying about it? Because
Yeah.
I think the American people have a very bad taste in their mouth when it comes to regime change, and we're going there
Yeah.
for oil. I mean, before it was, we saw in the Middle East, it was WMDs. We never really found any WMDs, but we got a lot of oil out of it, and a lot of
Yeah.
American lives and civilian lives later. So people don't want to go through that again. And then again, the economy's still not in great shape. I mean, me personally, I'm still paying just as much for groceries. I got four kids, and it's just as expensive. Gas has gone down a little bit, but cost of living hasn't gotten too much better, and I haven't seen wages climb as all that inflation went up under Biden. So people are still feeling like, man, can the quality of life get better for us before we go make it better for the Venezuelans or any other country,
Yeah.
which I think is a valid point.
And I think you're seeing a similarity, unfortunately for Trump, if it doesn't turn around. You're seeing a similarity that George H.W. Bush, and I mentioned him with Panama, so there really is a connection. Here's a
Hmm.
guy who, to me, things were fine. I've always said, there's like 340 million, however many people we have that are here, we all have our own economy, right? Like you'll sit there and say, well, for me, I'm fine. But your neighbor might be having a tough time, or someone down the street may have lost their job. They're having a terrible time. And, for Bush, things were starting to pick up and all the numbers were picking up, but people weren't feeling it yet, and that's the problem. If it's what I feel when I go to vote, it doesn't really matter if you tell me the stock market's great or you tell me, whatever economic indicator they want to use, and everybody uses something different. It doesn't, as a voter, all I care about is what's the price of eggs? What's the gas pump? Am I
Hmm.
making more than I was? And am I living a better life? And I think that's the danger Trump has too with putting so much energy into the foreign affairs. It, even if you are working on the economy, do people know that? Because they they all know about Maduro. They know about Iran with bombing the nuclear sites. But how many people can tell you what the inflation rate is or what the unemployment rate is? You hear numbers and you kind of forget about it. So it's a problem
Or you
for him.
don't
He's got to,
trust it because people
yeah,
lie all the time too to make it look better. I mean,
yeah,
I think what people understand is the fact that, we are constantly seeing billions of dollars being sent to foreign countries to fight their wars and feed their people and provide them with the infrastructure and all that. And then also at the same time, we see bombs being dropped that are worth millions of dollars on countries. I mean, like Iran for the 12 days. I mean, we spent a couple of $1 million right there. So what people
well,
realize is that even though they don't understand the numbers, they don't feel anything, they feel that the money that could be spent in this country that could be used to make their lives better is being sent away somewhere else or being wasted on wars and bombs being dropped everywhere. So that I think is the biggest problem that Trump is facing right now going into the midterms is that he has not kept his, three biggest promises that he made. The release of the Epstein files, the making, putting America first, no more wars. That none of that has happened. So I don't know. In your opinion, I mean, like, what do you think needs to happen? Because right now, I mean, like, I don't know how far this is true, but I've heard that there's even talk about the midterms probably getting postponed, or because it's definitely not a good situation going in. What do you think needs to happen for people to heal that rift that has occurred in the conservative movement right now? Because, both of us, I mean, we've mentioned this many times on the show that we have voted for Trump, 3 times in a row. we were part of this movement that we are slowly disassociating ourselves from because we cannot make sense of it. And what we are seeing is not what we voted for. So
Yeah.
I don't know
I
how you see that.
yeah, I think you're probably both part of that group that's discouraged. Uh, you know, I I think, any talk about when they talk about always gonna push the election back, you can't do that. There's no way you can do
Hmm.
that. I mean, we've had wars and we've had elections, so that's not gonna really happen. I mean, he's gotta make it happen. When I say him and the party have
Hmm.
to make people, more comfortable economically and probably get back to those core things. When you talk about, you know, no foreign wars, well, who wanted that? It was the people that voted for Trump, right? I
Hmm.
mean, it would probably be unfair to say, you know, all of Kamala Harris's people wanted a war, but it wasn't something that you heard them say a lot of. It's
Right.
almost, with Trump, I think it was trying to be different than the normal average Republican, the Bushes, Reagan, so forth. And I think when you now have, even though they're not wars, and I think that's how he would distinguish it, that these aren't wars. We bombed and, we took out a president, but I think if you're a voter, if you're the guy at home that goes to work, try to feed your 4 kids, that kind of thing, you look at it like it's a war, it's a waste of money. It's
Hmm.
not what the movement, and I think the movements, it really became huge in this last election. So yes,
Right.
he's got to turn that around. I think some of it, they're counting on the economy. They're counting on people getting big refund checks on their taxes, a better tax rate with some of the work they did. A lot of that takes a long time, though. I'm not as confident that by the midterms people will have that feeling yet. Now they
Right.
might by 2028, but by then, who knows who gets credit? I mean, you might have the Democrats having the House. I don't think they're going to get the Senate, but the House is certainly in play. And until people start feeling that, and I think he's got to also be out there talking more about that and less about blowing up drug boats and capturing foreign presidents, because it's disheartening to those people. Not everybody. I mean, there's hardcore Republicans because everybody thinks the MAGA movement, oh, it's this other group. It's in addition to the Republicans that are
Hmm.
supporting them, but
Right.
that's an important part. Without that
Yep.
part, you probably don't win. You certainly don't take the House, the Senate, and the presidency. You know, and so
Yeah.
yeah, it's he's got to get back to that stuff. And I thought he was, but then, like I said, I woke up very surprised to see, you know, Maduro. I don't know. In my mind, I thought Maduro was going to step down and go off into the sunset. Kind of naive because most guys running a country aren't going to do that. And I don't, how many people leave? They leave when a tank is chasing them out of the palace, right? I mean, the Shah, in Iran, you
Hmm.
don't leave,
Yeah.
generally, you know.
I think what happens is also people, in a sovereign nation, I mean, they kind of put their hopes on international law being upheld as well, right? I mean, you have this protection of a sovereign nation, and they're part of the UN and all that, and that didn't obviously was the biggest, assumption that he made that was wrong. So, I mean, tracking back to what I said earlier, my disappointment actually didn't start with any of this. It started when Trump refused to follow through with what Elon Musk, found out with his Doge,
Oh,
stuff. I mean, it goes far back as that. I mean, like, one of the things that I was, I mean, I've voted on both sides of the aisle. I'm an independent, but I voted for him 3 times because I expected him to, as an outsider, everything he said was right. And I should have learned my lesson with Obama, but I didn't. Because, that's another president who said everything right and we voted for him. But, the whole point was draining the swamp, the corruption, and people. the biggest thing is like, when you say stuff like that and people expect you to do it, you have to do something to show for that, right? And so then, Elon Musk comes in and shows a lot of the things that, were corrupt in the government. And he had stamps for, I mean, he had the receipts. I mean, he showed everything and and then all of a sudden, he's getting kicked out and Doge is getting shut down. And that was not a good thing. And then it was followed by the Epstein files. And all of a sudden, one morning, before going into the presidency, I mean, it was on Pam Bundy's desk. And then, months after the presidency, what Epstein files? So
Yeah.
these are all, and then all the, in the interim, I mean, people were also getting a look. I think this last year, we had a lot of things come out in the open. I mean, like, I don't think, well, I mean, like, we knew, but only a very small minority of people knew the impact of things like APAC on our political system, which was blown wide open with these two guys, who did the APAC tracker and showed a place where
Mhm.
anybody could go in and see how many of those people, got money from the APAC to run. And then Trump started attacking the two people in Congress who didn't get a dollar from them. So the people who are honest, so like, I'm sitting here looking at this and going like, to me, those two guys are honest because they didn't take money from an unregistered foreign PAC and they're making sense. They sound more America first than the person that we voted for. So you know what I mean? Like nothing seems to fit the narrative that was, played to us nonstop before the election and after the election. So I don't see how he can actually backtrack on all this and fix it. I'm all open. I'm ears to hear if you have any ideas. I mean, from your, I don't know, historical background or whatever. I mean, has this happened before?
Yeah, I think, I do think the one thing he has done, to give him credit, and I think some of the points you hit are, very true. Closing the border.
I'm gonna say something real quick here, but I want to make sure that because people are going to attack me for this. I am not saying that he has not done anything. I mean,
Right.
I'm with you on that. I mean, go ahead and explain this, but I want to make sure that people understand that we are not saying that he hasn't done anything. I mean, he has done quite a lot actually, but the key, factors that he ran on, the ones that I mentioned, are the ones that are bothering us, and those are important.
Right. Well, I would rank the border immigration or illegal immigration
Hmm.
as a top one. But
Yep.
I do think the Epstein files were probably more important to the MAGA group than
Oh
anybody.
yeah.
Now the Democrats have jumped on it and they're on or off. But yes, and I think part of it is messaging again. I mean,
Hmm.
Pam
Yep.
Bondi really, put her foot in her mouth when whatever she meant, I don't know. But when you say the file's on my desk or the list is on my desk, people
Hmm.
think list. Now, I don't know what everybody thought. I never really thought there was anything in there because I do think they would have prosecuted people, that they had real evidence on. I think you have a lot of allegations that are coming out as it drips out, where someone accused somebody else. And it's like, okay, well, we need evidence to charge them. But I understand where people are discouraged because they had evidence on Epstein several times and nobody did anything.
Hmm.
And I think it was well known what he was doing, on his island and in his house and elsewhere. You know, and then they let him off on a sweetheart deal back in, what was it, 2009 or so. So I think the MAGA group was really, and they were riled up by the same people. Dan Bongino on his radio show and podcast was going on about this forever. Cash Patel on talk shows, and then when they get in there, the FBI, they're saying, well, there's nothing there. Well, then why were you telling us there was? How you didn't know, in other words. So were you lying to us or were you misleading us for political purposes? That becomes kind of, a quick trap door for the guy you're helping because, all of a sudden you're saying, oh, well, they never say they're wrong, which is interesting. They just tell
Hmm.
you, I've looked at it. There's nothing there. Well, but you told me there was. I believed in you. That's why I voted for that guy. And that became I think, well, it still is a big issue, right? I mean, I think a lot of people who are big on that and believe there's something there, the fact that you drip out the information and the fact you're so slow or refusing to turn over things makes everybody think there's something there. Now I know they're saying we're protecting the victims. I don't know if anybody's asked the victims, do you want to be protected?
Right,
Because
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, some of these victims, have come forward and said, "Here, I was one of them." I mean, the one woman, Guffrey, I think you pronounce her name, she ended
Mhm.
up killing herself, but she was very clear on what happened. And it's like, how many others would be very, I don't think happy to talk about it, but willing to talk about it? That's left unsaid. They don't tell us that. And that's why we have the distrust or the people that make that their big issue. I think the other thing, you know, and I've had other conversations with people in interviews, and I've thought, that have had the similar thoughts that you have, that they're kind of down. Well, they acknowledge Trump's done things like the border, immigration, whatever, and some of the pricing, gas going down. They they're upset because it hasn't happened quicker, and maybe we have unrealistic expectations. I mean, the economy was totally screwed up by Biden. That's why it was easy for Trump to attract so many people from different backgrounds. I mean, you had more Hispanics move to him, more blacks, certainly young men, move towards him, even women, which is, I think, the holy grail of trying to get voters to move towards a Republican. And, I think those same people though feel disaffected and let down, because they wanted quick progress on all these issues. And unfortunately, sometimes you're a victim of your success. Like, he closed the border so quickly, in such a contrast to Biden, that I think a lot of us sit there and go, well, okay, now why are prices down? Why haven't you cut the prices in half? And why wasn't the Epstein file just thrown out there for us? And whatever other issue, you're too slow on these things. The war one would be easy to avoid, but for some reason, I think that might be one of those legacy issues where presidents try to assert themselves internationally.
Yeah, I think, like for the most part, like people might, like myself, I mean, like, we understand the time constraint and we're not expecting things to happen like yesterday. We need to see like things happening in the right direction in certain things. Like, Doge finished their audit in 120 days. And,
Yeah.
I have people from my family that work with the federal government. I mean, they moved really fast through there. I mean, he used every technology tool at his disposal, and within 120 days, he had everything all lined out. Nothing happened. So, like, you cannot, nobody can tell me that it's going to take time when nothing happens 9 months after that, or even
Yeah.
like more, right? You see what I'm
Well, and
saying? Like, if somebody was arrested or at least even talk about, like, there were dead people claiming social security checks. I mean, nobody in social security administration, their heads roll, nothing happens. So,
yeah, and I think that Doge, I mean, that's a real good example you bring up, because I think a lot of us were excited by it. I mean, the only thing I
mhm,
think that happened was the NGOs. A lot of that stuff, if we didn't realize it, I think some of us realized that money was a waste and perhaps just a big laundering scheme to send money
mhm,
back to, politicians. Um, but I do think, some of the other stuff, yeah, I share your frustration, because what they were finding, and probably even now we see this stuff in Minnesota, with the childcare, all that
mhm,
money that goes to some of these places, and you wonder, wait a minute, that's our tax money. One way or another, it's tax money.
Yeah.
And how come we
yeah.
allowed that to happen? Where, the Trump administration now has been there a year. Why didn't you stop it a long time ago? And maybe we asked too much. I don't know. But you are battling, you know, uh, the swamp, right? And that's part of the book.
Mhm,
We've had several swamps over the years. Trump is finding it a lot more difficult, I think, than he thought on that. And I think this administration this time is much better prepared than his first administration. But still, that's a force to deal with, the
Yeah.
bureaucrats in the federal government. And I think some of them, the problem is, we saw it in the first term, some of the people he was appointing were deep state. It wasn't,
Yeah.
you're being hit by your own
Yeah.
people. And I don't know how much of that is, the fault of not cleaning out better, getting rid of people before you try to make these changes, because, or is it just, you get some of the media and they tell you, and I find the media to be totally biased. In the book, I devote a whole chapter about the media, and it's hard to do that because that was, my background. I studied journalism before going to law school, worked in journalism, and it's obvious when you read some stories that or you watch television news and my God, they're telling us what they want us to, their
Sure. Yeah.
viewpoint news. So I think you've got all those factors and it makes it difficult. But this is the second term, really. And the Trump people should know this. They should be ready for it. And it's on them if they don't want to, I think they're getting into their heads now. He spoke to the House Republicans the other day to tell them, hey, if we don't win, they're going to impeach me. Yes, they
Yeah.
are. We know that.
I mean,
And where are we going? And then are you going to be making deals? Which then I think other people who, voted for him are like, don't make a deal with any of them. And so you're starting to lose more and more of your base. And the real police should have been doing such a good job that you go these 4 years and you run into 28 and try to do 8 years, probably with J.D. Vance, but whoever. And I don't know if that can get done unless you turn this thing around pretty quickly.
I think a big thing that would just make it better, and he doesn't even have to necessarily do more, it would be just quit promising so much. I mean, even with the Doge thing, he's like, "Oh, we can give all Americans X amount of money back, from the money we're going to save on Doge." That never
Oh,
happened. "Oh, we
all
can do
right, the
this."
Doge
It
check,
never has.
right?
So
Yeah.
it's like, just quit promising a bunch of, yeah, like quit talking about stuff that's not going to happen or that can't happen. Or
Yeah.
I don't know if he just got his ego's too big or too much pride, but I think the American people, or at least the MAGA movement, would actually welcome Trump being like, "You know what? I know we talked about this, but I'm running into a lot of roadblocks with this, guys. Like, this sucks." Not acting like it doesn't exist and that we should just be happy with where we're at, because people aren't happy.
Right.
You can't gaslight the entire country into believing something that's not happening, like
Well,
that.
I agree. Didn't we find that out with Biden when they were telling us, no, everything's fine. I mean, the economy's fine. And you're like, no, it's not. I was just at the
Right.
store.
Yeah.
The price of eggs is ridiculous. And yeah, I think you're right. The people would certainly respond better than the truth. And I think the Doge savings they talked about, the tariffs, we're going to get this dividend check. But when you do the math, as often you have to do now, if you read anything in the media, you have to do your own research. And I'm sitting there going, well, that's impossible. There's not enough money coming in to give out these. Who are we giving these checks to? People that don't pay taxes? That doesn't make any sense. Nor did you even promise that when you ran. I'm not looking for them to give checks out. I'm looking for them to, you know, cut the deficit, reduce the national debt. Uh, you know, Obviously some of the things like immigration he's good on, but make the economy work so that, families can afford it, that, old people aren't back to eating cat food or something. It's simple requests, like
Basic human decency stuff. I mean,
yeah,
what
and
we've
let's not promise what we can't deliver and
right.
maybe never intended to deliver.
Yeah, I know we've cut Ukraine $187 billion in checks since that whole thing. Like, I think they've gotten enough of our tax dollars. I think we can stop funneling. I think it's in the trillions at this point into the Middle East.
Well,
I'm
yeah.
sure Americans could use that, and our own infrastructure and rebuilding things could use it.
Well,
So,
Ukraine, did you get the feeling President Zelensky was at the White House? And I might be wrong on the timing here, but I'd say within the last 3 weeks or so. And I thought the whole news conference when they're sitting there talking was the same one I had seen like 3 months earlier. I think this guy just comes back every 3 months for money. And
Yeah.
they have the same news conference and they talk about how we're really close, we're really close. And no, you're not. You don't want to settle this thing, and Putin doesn't want to settle it, but you're just telling us the same thing you told us 3 months ago. And I could be mistaken on timing, but it's roughly the same thing. We're just every few months we'll come back and tell you we're really going to get this done now. Give us more money.
I think some of his friends need more yachts. That's what it is. They need more yachts over there. I don't even know if that is true. I heard a statistic like earlier in the like middle of 2025 that like Ukrainians have the highest ratio, like percentage ratio of yachts in
Really?
the world now since we've been helping. Yeah, I don't know if it's true. It could be wrong, but regardless, it's funny. I mean, like with the amount of money that we've sent them is crazy. We could
Well,
have used the almost $200 billion and given out checks if we wanted to do that. Like I'm not for a bunch of, government aid. I think it creates dependency. I do think there's a place to help people in need through hard times, but I don't think creating dependency on the government's a good idea. But if we are going to shell out money in the hundreds of billions, I'd rather it go to the American people than the
yeah.
foreign the foreign
Well,
countries for them to buy stuff with, I guess.
well, the other problem with the foreign countries, and Ukraine's probably a good example, but I mean, we give billions to everybody, so I don't want to just pick on them. But since they're the big topic recently, it's, and they're doing it for a war purpose, it's not some other purpose. You know, how is that even tracked? Because we couldn't track money that went to Minnesota, and that's here. Who's actually auditing the money that's going to Ukraine or any place that's funding a war? Because that's really what we're doing. I mean, I tend to think nobody is, and we'll find out just like the NGOs that there's a lot of waste and corruption. I don't know if they're all buying yachts. I mean, I'm willing to go along with that, but I'm also not willing to think that every single dollar is spent wisely and in the best interest of the United States.
No, absolutely. Well, Dennis, I'm really happy that you were able to join us today. You're want to give you another opportunity to plug your book. Where can people find your book?
Yeah, the book, I have a website. It's authordennisbrennan.com. It's also available at amazon.com, Barnes and Noble. Uh, everywhere good books are sold, I'm told. Um, we,
That's good.
yeah. So we're out there, trying to push it as best you can, and it's something that I think, it's all referenced. It's not my opinion, so everything's referenced. And if you're a fan of Trump or history, I think it gives you good speaking points. If you're not, I think it lets you learn things that maybe you didn't know, opens your mind to other possibilities.
Well, that's awesome. Well, that book again is DC Swamp Strikes Back, Aaron Burr, Donald Trump, and their similar battles. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. And again, Dennis, thanks for joining us, and we'll have to have you on again sometime.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Great
guys.
night.